Hello all, so welcome back. This is the third video in a series that I'm doing on attending conferences for illustrators and or creative writers. So I've done two other videos already in this series, one on preparing for conferences and one on attending for conferences. I will link those below as well as up here. And this video is all about, this is for the illustrators out there, this is about preparing Illustrator cards. Now this is something that you do not just for conferences, but also as something you might do to mail out, so it's definitely not limited to conferences. But I did want to run through some best practices and thoughts on how you decide what these should look like and what your plan is for your Illustrator cards. So let's dive in and talk about some of the things that you can do to have the most success with your Illustrator cards. So if you're not terribly familiar with what Illustrator cards are, they're basically postcard size. You can get them in a bit of variety of sizes, but more or less they're a postcard size little sampling of your artwork. And they're used in generally two different capacities. One would be that you print them up and you bring them to conferences, in which case they may or may not have all of the postcard paraphernalia, stamp area, etc. that they would have if you were mailing them. The other is that you are actually planning some sort of little mailing campaign, in which case you would take into account the requirements of a postcard setup for actual mailing. And these are just a way to share with art directors, agents, editors your art. And it's a nice little appetizer sampling of what you do, rather than having your whole portfolio out there, because you can drive people to your online portfolio with these, but obviously you can't pop your portfolio in the mail and send it off. So these are a grand way to sort of get your art out there and get your name in front of people. At conferences, you generally will share them around with people. You'll share them with your fellow artists, illustrators, things like that. Just, editors, agents, to let them see who you are and what you're up to. So having said that, what other sorts of things that you should actually put on one of these? It varies, but in general, it should have obviously your name. And in my case, because I'm an author illustrator, I actually put that on here. If you're just an illustrator, there's no need to do that. But if you do write your own things as well, I think it's good to point out to them that you also do your own writing, because very often that can be an enticing package, that you're both the author and the illustrator. Also, you would want to include your website, your email address, and I put my phone number on these because these came with me to a conference, so phone number for me was an easy given on that. Sometimes people are not comfortable putting their phone numbers on the postcards if they're mailing them through the mail. I do it anyway because a lot of art directors really do like to work, just pick up the telephone and call. But if you're not comfortable with that, then you're welcome to leave it off. But you would most definitely want your email address and your phone number on it. If you're doing illustrations that are from a manuscript or a book dummy that you're working on, it's also just fine to put some sort of little notation on there that this art is from, and then the title of your book that you're working on, so that they know that that's a working title that you are currently maybe trying to shop around. It's really important that you think very carefully about how these look. These are really fast. These come in the mail to an art director, and you're going to be lucky to get it's like that. It's fast, and so it really needs to look good, and it really needs to make a statement right away. You definitely want to pick the strongest image for the front of your postcard, depending on the kind of illustrator you are. If you're wanting to write for books, picture books, etc., and even in general, the best kind of pictures are narrative sorts of pictures. So pictures where things are happening, where it seems like there's some sort of story going on. If you're an illustrator and you're interested in, say, packaging design or things that might not require a narrative spin, this would be different. But in any capacity that the art directors or the agency editors would be looking for some kind of story element, you want that to play out in your art, which means that the best pictures are not necessarily just a stock image. It's an image in which something is happening. It is an image in which emotion is being displayed, an image in which there is action going on, so that they can get a sense of your ability to convey some kind of narrative through your artwork. You also want to make sure to do the art that you want to do. So if you do animals well and that's what you like to draw, then make it about animals. If you're really great at people, do people, but make it your strongest art and feature that. Sometimes some people will include multiple artworks on the front. I have seen that. I tend to prefer not doing that. It can be a great way to show that you can do multiple scenes, but I personally find that it is so small when you do 4 little quadrants or something like that, that you don't necessarily get to maximize the beauty of the art that you have made. Really do take care to have it be art that you want to do. If you're really great at drawing beavers, but you don't really want to draw animals, you want to draw people, then don't feature a bunch of animals, because they are going to hire you to do that. So while you want to feature what you do best, make sure that whatever that is in fact what you want to be drawing. Really do maximize the space. If you're not going to be mailing them, or if you have space to put images on the back, it is highly recommended that you show a range of emotion and show a range of movement. Both of mine, so on this one I have one of my characters, and on the front he's quite upset and angry, and on the back he's very excited and happy, and he's moving around, and you get a different sense of his body and his body movements, but you also get to see the consistency with which I can render him. So you want to demonstrate consistency of quality and consistency of the character itself, but you also want to demonstrate the range that that character encompasses within that consistency. The same goes for the other one that I did, and that these were just little people characters, and so I did several on the front in one sort of happy state, and on the back in different kind of emotion. This one in particular conveyed that there was some kind of a story happening, and oftentimes if you are a writer illustrator and you do that, it can entice someone to want to see the story itself. When it comes to creating these for going through the mail, make sure to take care that you're following the postal requirements for wherever it is that you live, because often there is a requirement perhaps of a border of space that needs to be left so that barcodes can show up, or how close the stamp is to the edge, or where the address is. All of those things you want to make sure that you have straightened out before you go to print, because you do not want to have to reprint these. The other thing that I would say regarding just the technicalities of printing, I recommend figuring the printer that you want before you really officially lay everything out, because while there are sort of, it's a postcard size, different printers all have their own tiny little maybe ranges of that can vary by 3/4 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch or something like that. So just slightly different measurements. You really want these to look so professional, so you just choose the printer that you want, pay attention to their requirements for bleeds and slugs and things like that, and how far your art should go to the edge, etc. And then work with those dimensions when you craft this, because it can be very heartrending to craft it in one size and then you choose your printer and it's a 1/2 inch different, and then you're sitting there making all sorts of little tweaky changes, or it doesn't get printed properly and you have to print it again. So just make sure all of those requirements are in place. And I highly recommend that you, especially if you're going to a conference or any kind of thing where there's a deadline by which you are either mailing these or bringing them with you to a conference, give yourself quite a bit of time to prepare because you don't want to do last minute shipping or anything like that. And if there is an issue, you want it to work out. Which means that if you give yourself that lead time, you can have the printer send you a sample, like a print sample, rather than just a digital sample. I cannot stress enough how valuable an actual print sample is. You don't want to just rely on the colors based on a computer screen. Not when you're an Illustrator. That's your bread and butter. You want to make sure those colors are right, and you want to see what they're going to look like on the actual paper, which means planning well enough in advance to get that print sample to you to make sure it's all proper. The last thing I would say is, if you're mailing these as part of a campaign, how frequently do you mail them out? And I would say up to 4 times a year with these seasons. 2 to 4 times a year you can send them out, feature different things. It's a great way to keep yourself in front of people and to let them see what you can do. So that's it. There you have it. I hope that was helpful. If it was, please give this a big thumbs up and click that subscribe button below. And I do recommend that if you're attending a conference or if you're thinking about it, watching the rest of the videos in this series. I thank you so much for your time and your support. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day. I will see you soon. Bye.